Hey there, Apprentice Paul here. I'm taking you on a journey where I learn about beekeeping in Australia. My apprentice masters are my dad Bruce and my brother Craig, and between them they have over 60 years of beekeeping experience. In today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to make frames out of scrap timber that I found. This episode is brought to you by Thank You Honeybees. First thing we need to look at is timber selection. With the research that I've done, what you're looking for is good quality pine. Now, you can't use every single pine available. So this here is structural pine, but it's H4. It's been treated to go underground. So it's got a lot of chemicals in there that basically I wouldn't like to introduce to my beehive. This one here is structural pine, so this is treated pine again. This one they use in the frames for housing. Now this here is non-structural pine. It hasn't been treated. It's reasonably good, but the only thing about it is it does contain a lot of knots and things like that, which is the reason that it's non-structural. So when you're making your end bar, something like this is probably pretty reasonable because you'll be able to cut that bit out and you'll still have enough length there without any knot in it for your end bars. This here is a piece of structural, but it's not treated. It's just been ripsawed, so massively produced, so it's pretty much in the rough. But for things like top bars, this would probably be pretty perfect. You've got to strip down a lot of the timber to get to a nice piece, but you know, if you're looking for a cheap way of making frames, this is it. Get rid of the rubbish. Now when making frames, accuracy is pretty important. So I've checked this square out. I've made sure that it is square. So what I do, I lay it on a surface, then I mark up, and then I flip it over, lay it on the other side, and make sure that the two lines are parallel to each other. So yeah. Right now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to square up the saw, and then I'm going to make sure that my marks are calibrated correctly on the inclinometer on the front of the saw for the saw blade. So to start with, we'll wind the blade up to its maximum height and then get the square and we'll put it on the side. So going by that, you can see that my blade's out a little bit. So what we'll do, we'll just square that up. Make sure we've got no gap at top and bottom. Right, we'll lock it off at that. And now I'm just going to adjust. Yeah, you can see that my marks are out a little bit. So I'm just going to get a screwdriver and I'm just going to adjust them. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make some top bars and maybe some bottom bars out of this timber here. I might get it, I might not. So I'm just going to strip it back to 22mm to start with. And we'll start by tidying the edge up. So I've stripped that off. I've got rid of all the rough timber that was there. Not a great deal of knots in this, so it'll be pretty good for what I want to do. So the next bit I want to do is make this edge square to this one. So the blade's set up nice and square to the table now. So what I'll do is I'll put this edge down and then push that through the saw and tidy it up. Normally I'd be using the dust extractor while I'm using the saw, but because I'm trying to describe what I'm doing, I don't want to have to turn it on and off again. So there's just going to be a fair bit of sawdust around. Our next step is we want to strip our stock back to 22mm. I'll just check that with the frame. Yeah, it's 22. Now rather than using the gauge that's on the saw, I'm just going to use the ruler to set it up. We've got two nice edges on this now. We've got one there and one there. So we'll make sure that one goes up against the stop and the other one goes on the table. And that way we'll make sure that we've got nice square timber. Square edge, square edge. So now we've got our stock back to 22 millimetres. So now we have to strip it off to our height. And the height of this frame should be 16 millimetres. So we'll set our saw up again to 16 millimetres. Now I'm not sure if you can see this, but these teeth are differently shaped. So this tooth here is right-handed and this one's left-handed. So this one cuts more on the right-hand side than this one cuts. So you can't set it up by a left-hand tooth, you've got to set it up by a right-hand tooth. And that's perfect. Well, that's the stock size for our top bar, so it's 22 millimetres by 16 millimetres. And this is our offcut, and the offcut isn't quite wide enough to get our 16 mil out of, but it is wide enough that I'll get a 9 millimetre cut out for the bottom bar. Again, we'll just set our saw up for 9 millimetres. I'll have to swap over on the side of the saw because I've got too big a gap there and it'll jam the timber up. Now what I'm doing, I'm going to set this rip saw up, and I'm just going to set it up on top of my table saw, and I'll just put a block of wood up against it with this fence, and we'll cut our top bars to length first. I just nicked the top bar there with the saw. So when I cut my rebate in there to sit in the frame, I'll just have to make sure I use that side. So now I'll cut our bottom bars, they're 445 long. So we'll just set the saw up to that. You can see that knot that was in the timber there. For the bottom bar, I wouldn't worry so much about that. For the top bar, yeah. But for the bottom bar, all it does is make sure that the frame stays nice and square. On this piece, it is easy to cut it out though, because there's nothing else along the length of the timber. So I'll just take it out altogether. If you don't have to have it there, you don't need to. So square the end off. It's a shame when I was stripping that timber to start with, I put the saw in there before I really thought about it, and I destroyed that piece. It would have been perfect, but anyway, it's in the scrap. Out of that one length, I got 3 top bars and I got 6 bottom bars. Now, there's 2 ways I can do these rebates. So one way is I can set it up in the table saw and I do 2 cuts, and the other way is I can do it in my router. I'm not sure if I can do it in the router because I don't know if the router I've got's tall enough. What I'll do for now, I'll set it up in the table saw. I'll do a few of them this way, and then after that I'll set them up in the router and we'll give the router a try. Right, now I'll go through and I'll do these 4 together. And then I'll set the saw up again to do this cut. Now we'll bring the saw up to 28 millimeters. Make sure that it's right on the very top. I've just made a piece of timber so I can push on the blade, and I can just drop that in there. And it sets it up automatically for each time. So what I'll do now is I'll set the router up to do these and see how we go with them. I think, yeah, I'm just going to have to change that plate out to start with. I've got to change that plate out because it's too big. The diameter of that's too big for that router. First up we'll set the height, which is pretty easy. We've already got one of these cut out, so I've just got to make sure that it works on there. I was worried that this router bit was too short, but I think it's going to make it okay. Only just, I think. So these are our bottom bars, okay, and they need a rebate on each side. So I think what we'll do is we'll use the router again. I think that it's a lot faster, and also too, because of the way I've done it, I'll only have to set the machine up once to do it. That hasn't done too bad a job of those ends. When we go to make our end bars, they should fit nicely in there. So while I'm on the table saw, I've just got to finish these guys off. I need to put a 1/4 inch or a 6mm deep groove in there, and I need to put the same in on this one. Don't know how that one's going to go, but we'll give it a go. Right, so the groove I'm putting in these, so in the top bars for wax, and then if I decide to use plastics, I might actually change the design for plastics a little bit, but for plastics put another groove in the bottom there, so you just kind of bend your sheet up a little bit and then you can push the plastic in. So what I've got here, I've got a slide that I made up for the table saw to put the dovetails on the end, or the finger grooves. So I have to modify it a bit because at the moment it goes right back to here and it only needs to kind of go up to there. So we'll just modify it. nicely done. If you go somewhere where there's a bit of housing construction, you'll find a lot of these timbers, or a lot of pallets. Pallets are pretty good, just so long as they haven't had any chemicals on them. So, but this one here, I doubt it very much. It came from the door manufacturer. Pull all your nails. Don't want those going through your saw. With the timber I got out of that pallet, these aren't quite wide enough for an end bar. So what I'll have to do is, first up I'll just clean it, and then I'll strip it back and I'll see if I can get either a top bar or a bottom bar out of it. So I've stripped them nicely. They're nice and clean now. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to strip these back to 34 millimeters. Set our saw up. Well, that's pretty good. Out of that, I've got enough to make some sidebars, and I've got enough to make some either top or bottom bars, so I think I'll make top bars. Now what I need to do, I need to make the rebates in the end bars. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use the router again to run these grooves in. So I've set it up there at the moment, and basically all I'm going to be doing is pushing it in, turning it around, pushing it in, and hopefully that gap ends up being spot on. Because I have to cut the recesses in the side of these last, and I want to put my groove in all the way through there now, I've got to add that and add up. So basically I need to maintain 14 millimeters in there, so I'll have to go 9 and 9 to do that. There's the end bars that I've made out of that stock. So as you can see, I've got, there's the top side. A bit tight, but that'll be fine. There we go. So that's the top side. And then we've got the bottom side groove. So now all that's left to do is I just have to cut these into strips. So I'll just do that on the table saw. Nice little box full of ends. And so we'll set a stop up. Like that. Put a clamp on him. Put one again. I've just got to raise this stop up a little bit. The sawdust is getting caught right in the corner there and it's stopping from coming up. So what I'll do, I'll just set that up where it's got to be. Take this off. Put a small piece of timber under it, like that. Put that back down where it's got to go. Just make sure she's spot on. Clamp it up nice and tight. And pull this out. Now all the sawdust will go straight underneath there. That's the theory. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to make a jig for drilling these out. So basically, there's 4 holes. First one's 1 inch down, and then 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. Or sorry, from the top. Yeah, so inch, 2 inches, 2 inches. Yeah, that's right. So I'm just going to mark these out, and then I'll set up a piece of timber. So basically, all I'll be doing is I'll make 2 jigs. I'll get away with just 1 jig. I'll set it up so that the first hole gets drilled 1 inch down, and then slide it to a stop 2 inches away, and then I'll set the next hole up 2 inches away from that, and then the stop 2 inches away from that, and that'll, 1 jig will do the job. Now what the plan here is, I've set up this little jig to drill these out with. It's got 2 stops on it, so one for the very far hole and one for the closest hole. And what I have to do in between is just line it up with those marks that are there, and that'll give me somewhere near it. Okay, right, so I'm very happy with how all this has turned out. Now all that's left to do is just bang a few together, so we'll just do that now. So top bar in place, and we'll do this quite quickly. We'll just use some nails from our trusty nail gun. A little bit of burr there on the wood, but it's no biggie. You can see little blemishes like this just where the nail holes were, and you can also see the knots in the timber. They're not going to affect it. The bees will probably fill all that with a bit of propolis. And there you have it, one beautiful bee frame. Alright, so there you have it, making bee frames out of pallet material. I'm very happy with how these came out. Actually, they've turned out extremely well. Haven't got any wax in them yet, so that's the kind of the final test, I suppose. The bees will build on it if there's wax in there. Haven't set the wire up yet either, so there's still a few little things to be done. All right, now the crux of it all. Okay, so building these isn't as cheap as buying them. You can buy them for, you know, $4, $5 delivered each. If you're lucky, you can make probably 6 or 7 an hour. That took me all day, but I was filming, so it took a long time. Plus I've made a lot of extra pieces. The best way to do it is just to run through, make as many of the same, do as many of the same processes again and again straight after each other, and then flip to the next process and do that one. That's how you mass produce things. It's one single process done over and over and over again, and doing checks along the way to make sure that your quality is not changing. But yeah, so that side of it, yep, buying them's cheaper, but I didn't have anything to do for the day. So I've done all the work around the house, you know, except I can't do anything with that. But I've done all the work around the house. So I was only going to sit in front of the television anyway, so I'm better off out here being active doing that. Anyway, so as far as I'm concerned, it's extremely beneficial, and I mean extremely beneficial, to make them. All right, what's going on from here? So I've been away in the apiary with my brother, and he bought a hive from my dad's place, and he left the bottom board inside it, and the hive overheated and had a wax melt out. Killed a lot of bees, a lot of brood. So yeah, it was in a bit of a mess, and basically it sort of sent the hive down to 1/3 of its size, but it didn't kill the queen. Anyway, while we were out there in his apiary, he had another hive that had lost its queen. It had been out for its maiden flight, like you could tell because there were cells in there, and she didn't make it back. So the hive was starting to deplete. There was still some unhatched brood in there, which was a good thing. So we just combined the two, and basically I don't know how it's gone yet. I'm still waiting to talk to my brother about it. I haven't had the chance. He's only just got back from out there again, so hopefully it's gone very well, and it looked like it was going to. So we'll see what happens there. All right, that's it for me. Okay, so if you're really interested in the stuff that we're doing and you want to learn a little bit more, as I do, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. It doesn't cost you anything, it's free. And also too, what I'd like you to do is go and check this video out. This video is a high-up crane that I mounted to my car trailer. I got the high-up crane, someone had cut it in half, I welded it all back together and then mounted it to my car trailer, and it's going to be really helpful for doing these bees. Alright, until next time, cheers. Thanks for watching.